America in 2020 is suffering at the hands of communist China. The China virus has killed over 200,000 Americans, and the economy is in trouble. For over 2 decades, they have engaged in unfair trade practices, stolen over $5 trillion in intellectual property, and sought to corrupt and influence American politicians. They are building a military capable of challenging the United States, and they have defaulted on their sovereign debt obligations, owing the United States nearly $2 trillion. Everyone knows that nations issue sovereign bonds to finance their government spending. In the United States, we have U.S. Treasury bonds that Americans and investors all over the world buy. They are an excellent investment since Americans believe in honoring our sovereign obligations. Our first Secretary of the Treasury, Alexander Hamilton, insisted that debts be repaid to establish both the credibility and credit of the United States. He considered debt a sacred obligation. The nation we know today as the People's Republic of China had its origins in the Revolution of 1912. Back then it was called the Republic of China, and it issued government bonds to consolidate the revolution and establish a government. China borrowed millions using government bonds, but in 1938, after conflict with Japan and internal war with the Chinese Communist Party, they quit paying those investors, including 20,000 American families who bought these bonds believing the Chinese would honor their debts as other nations do. The sum now owed to the American people on China's defaulted government gold bonds total $1.8 trillion. No American government has had the courage to make China pay. In 1987, UK Prime Minister Margaret Thatcher forced a payment from the Chinese government for British bondholders as part of her Hong Kong negotiations. China was not going to pay the money they owed unless forced to do so. The question we ask today is, why is China still refusing to pay America? And so over 20,000 families joined together to form the American Bondholders Foundation. The American Bondholders Foundation is not made up of big banks or Wall Street hedge funds. They are hardworking Americans who believe President Donald Trump when he says he will put America first and fight for American interests at home and abroad. Gianna Bianco, president of the ABF, first met with the president in August 2018. Then went public in December of last year citing U.S. law and regulations that enable the president to execute the purchase of the ABF bonds, reducing America's debt by offsetting them against the U.S. treasuries owned by China. Gianna's message is now spreading like wildfire. Gianna has been a frequent guest on Steve Bannon's War Room Pandemic. Demand for her story then led to podcasts, articles in mainstream American publications, interviews on TV networks, video blogs, YouTube, Twitter, and Facebook, as well as networks such as Dish, Roku, DirecTV, Fox Business, Fox News, Bloomberg, and One American News Network. The ABF has also become an international topic. When Fox News picked up the story, Neil Cavuto was stunned at the potential of the ABF solution. The ABF website has been bombarded with international internet traffic. The ABF opportunity has now been available to over 50 million American homes, and the support is growing. On August the 13th, a concurrent resolution was introduced in the U.S. Senate by Republican Senators Martha McSally and Marsha Blackburn, and in the House by Republican Congressman Mark Green. U.S. law outlined in 4 statutes enables the president to order Secretary Mnuchin to implement this solution. This is a legal binding debt obligation owed by China to Americans for long-term debt that governments issue, and has been legally confirmed. The ABF solution is as follows. The U.S. Treasury would purchase the defaulted China bonds for pennies on the dollar from the ABF. The U.S. Treasury can then offset Treasury bonds held by China with the newly purchased ABF-held bonds to either substantially reduce America's debt owed to China or for other purposes benefiting the U.S. government, such as in trade negotiations. Any amounts not applied against the Treasury bonds held by China to offset debt would become an asset of the general fund of the U.S. Treasury.
It's very important to realize that the Chinese have a great interest in keeping us happy. The climate depends upon our believing and having some basis to believe that people will keep their promises in China.
What we're asking right now is fair play for the American people and the people that hold these bonds. That just means that China pays the debt that they owe.
It's in China's interest to solve this issue because it's been festering for a long time and it's not going to go away.
Support the efforts of the American Bondholders Foundation, and you can bring down the deficit by significant numbers.
Americans are now asking these fundamental questions. If this does not cost the taxpayers, why is this not being done? How is it possible the Chinese are now issuing billions in new debt to Americans via Wall Street banking? Mr. President, you are the right person at the right time to swiftly execute the largest deal of its kind in U.S. history. Americans want China to pay for its wrongs and for the China virus.
We must hold accountable the nation which unleashed this plague onto the world, China.
It wasn't your fault that this happened. It was China's fault. And China is going to pay a big price, what they've done to this country.